أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. We start in the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. We were witness there is no deity worthy worship except Allah, praise and glory be to Him, and that Muhammad is the seal of messengers. He was sent as a mercy to all mankind. May peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, his family, his companions, and those who follow this path until the day of judgment. I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all, dear brothers, dear sisters, dear listeners, dear viewers. This is the A2Z Show with your host, Dr. Abdul Aziz, and as our guest as well, Brother Asad Zaman. And of course, I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you all, inshallah, from this pandemic and from all illnesses. For those who are ill, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them quick recovery and cure, inshallah. And for those who passed away, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them with His mercy and His forgiveness, and give them the highest for those in paradise, and give their relatives and their parents and their families and their friends as well patience and a great reward. Ameen. I think there's a lot of things to cover in a week anyway. I think the highlight was, on the international level, on this storming of the Capitol Hill in the United States as well. And this, I think, will be covering in the international news or world news as well. Of course, I think the 4th of January, Monday, was the Braille World Day. Therefore, the people who are partially or blind, they use the Braille code to communicate as well. And therefore, that's the United Nations International Day on the 4th of January every year. As well, and especially with the pandemic as well, that is a very as well highlight of the week as well. I think we start with this is a current affairs show talking about local, community, national, European, international news. So therefore, we start with our local community as well, from the Minbar al-Jum'ah or Friday pulpit. And of course, the Friday has been again disrupted as well, because a lot of mosques have closed because of the national lockdown announced by Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister. Of course, some other mosques, they haven't actually closed, but they stayed open, keeping face masks and social distancing as well, and all other guidelines as well. They have done it as well. Right. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Asad Zaman. I hope you are all right. Your family, everybody is okay.
Alhamdulillah. A week is, for you and me, a week passes very quickly. I think it was when Jum'ah we realized, a week is gone. In terms of politics and what's happening in the world, a week is a long time. So much is taking place, and it seems to be accelerating the number of events and the severity, and the sort of normal flow of things is being seriously disrupted.
Okay.
In America.
Have you been in any Friday prayer today, or?
Yes, I was at the Salam Center, community center, and I talked about essentially. See, last time we discussed Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ, in the context of dawah during the Christmas period, and I said it was a great time. Dawah is fard upon all of us, because there'll be no more prophets after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the Khatam al-Nabiyyin, and therefore we need to exploit every opportunity we can to convey the message to the best of our ability. And I was saying that run up to Christmas is a great time to engage with our Christian neighbors and colleagues. Less than 50% of Britain now is officially Christian, and it's on a decline, on a major decline. Religion generally is. There's atheism and other strange religions like tree hugging and all that stuff. They seem to be on the rise, like almost you could call them pagan religions and stuff. So yeah. So what I was saying was, yes, dawah is extremely important, of course, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, that you cannot utter better words than words which encourage others towards Allah, towards Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us these are the best words you could utter from your mouth. And then, of course, to act upon them, to practice what you preach. Very, very important. There's no point. And the point I was making today was that, yes, dawah is really important, but dawah without practicing what you are preaching is almost hypocritical. Not just ineffective, but it is hypocritical. If I'm a salesman trying to sell a car to you, or say a vacuum cleaner, and I'm telling you what a wonderful vacuum cleaner this is, but I don't use that, I use something else, it's going to be very difficult for me to convince you or anybody else to buy this vacuum cleaner if I don't believe in it myself and I don't use it myself. And, as representatives and ambassadors of Islam that each and every one of us is, if we don't practice the faith, then how can we encourage others towards it? If we think it's such a fantastic religion, and of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what a fantastic religion it is, when he tells us, Inna ad-dina 'inda Allah al-Islam, that without a shadow of doubt, the religion and the way of life Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for the whole of humanity is al-Islam. There are plenty of other ideologies and faiths around, but it is Islam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the whole of humanity to follow. So we need to understand why. And as I was saying to them, if somebody asks you why you're Muslim, we really should not be saying, because my mum and dad are Muslims. That would be a pretty poor excuse. We should say, I am convinced, firmly convinced, that this way of life is superior to every other way of life that exists on the planet. And that you can only say with any sincerity if you've studied Islam and looked into other faiths as well, perhaps. But certainly, at least you must have studied the faith and you are practicing it. So if you have neither studied it nor practiced it, how can we be really proud of this faith? So we should not be Muslims only because our mum and dad are Muslims. We should be Muslims because we are convinced by this faith that this is the way of life. And of course, that means building our taqwa. And as I was saying to them, that we need to, especially as it's the beginning of the year, we need to reflect upon our lives. We need to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of my life? And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I didn't create insan nor jinn, but to worship me. And so long as we understand that and have a full appreciation of that, we will gradually build our taqwa, which of course means to be so conscious of Allah that every single one of our actions and utterances from our mouths go through the filter of acceptance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if something is going to cause displeasure to Allah, either our actions or our utterances, then we shouldn't utter them. We shouldn't do it. That's what taqwa is all about. And of course, I was saying to them that there's no better time to boost your taqwa than the time of Ramadan. And Ramadan is we're on a countdown now. It's only a few months away now, middle of April, around the 14th, 15th of April. And, you know, literally just a few months now, less than 100 days. So we need to try and emulate the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when 6 months before the onset, the start of Ramadan, they would start preparing for it mentally, psychologically, physically, in every respect. And I was saying, well, we've only got about 4 months left now, and therefore we should really start thinking very seriously about it and about Ramadan. And of course, the best way to do that, apart from, of course, praying 5 times, which we should be doing anyway, is, well, we're going through winter. And that means the shortest days of the entire year, which means that from the break of dawn, which is about 6:45, till sunset, which is about 4 o'clock, you've only got about 9 hours. And 9 hours for us Muslims is peanuts, it's nothing. We're used to 19 hours of fasting in the summer. So 9 hours is an early breakfast and a late lunch. That's all it is. It's something that we should be doing at the very least every Monday and Thursday, and the 3 middle days of every month.
As people say, the winter is the spring of the believers, shorter days for fast and longer nights for prayer.
Exactly, and that's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that winter is a gift for Muslims, for the reason that you've just stated, that the days are very short, so it's very easy to fast, but we can gain an enormous amount of blessings from Allah. And at the same time, the nights are long, and so we have plenty of time to worship Allah and get, you know, enormous reward.
Besides the health benefits as well.
Oh, yes. I mean, as we approach Ramadan, we will do a number of programs on Ramadan. And I've got a ton of information on the health benefits of fasting. So as we approach, we will do maybe 4 or 5 programs on the different aspects of fasting and how they impact on us in terms of, you know, weight control, in terms of delaying the onset of dementia, and how the actual the mechanics of it, the medical explanation of that, how it cleanses the entire system, detoxification. I mean, you know, there are just so many benefits that non-Muslim researchers, scientists are telling us Muslims, you know, these are the benefits, enormous benefits of fasting. So inshallah, we will spend a good number of sessions or parts of the sessions on the health benefits of fasting. And it's not something only Muslims should be doing. It's something that should be recommended by doctors for everyone. So yeah, that essentially was the kind of reminder for today that we must practice what we preach, and definitely we should obviously be giving dawah, but we need to give dawah to our nafs, to ourselves, to ensure that what we say we believe in, we actually believe in, and we are practicing it, and we are good role models for our children and for those around us. We're not hypocrites. Too many of us, unfortunately, are hypocrites.
Allah make it easy, inshallah, protect us from hypocrisy, inshallah.
Absolutely.
Well, as you mentioned as well, therefore, about this 5+2 diet, which is Mondays and Thursdays, what the Prophet ﷺ, and therefore you can do even 3-4 days a month easily, as I said it before. And the winter, the days are very short, therefore the fast is very very, very easy
9 hours. 9 hours is absolutely nothing.
compared
literally.
with the summertime. Yes.
Early lunch, rather than 8 o'clock, you have it at 5:30.
Mm.
Right. Breakfast, and
Right.
then
I think. Okay, that's. I think. Jazakallah khair. I think I attended the first because I think they did the three Friday khutbahs because next door mosque was closed, and therefore I was actually on the first one given by Brother Imam Habib, and he talked about true happiness in Islam.
which mosque was that?
That Brother Imam Habib, the first in Salam community. Huh?
Which mosque?
Same which you have given. You have given the second one.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay.
Third one was in Arabic as well, but I attended the first one at 12:30. They did one at 1 o'clock, which you have done, and another one at 1:30 in Arabic as well. Let's move on, I think, because we spoke about next door mosque was closed, but the Salam Committee Association was open. Therefore, close or open based on the guidelines of the government and the national lockdown, which has been now enforced anyway. The place of worship are open as long as they follow the guidelines of social distancing, mask keeping and sanitization and hygiene. There should be no problem. But however, I heard some of the mosques they closed on medical background because they had on their boards the board of trustees, and they discussed this kind of things, and they decided that because of the rate of infection is increasing, and we'll talk about it later, inshallah. Therefore, they decided even better to close the mosques. Close and open, the disruption it causes. And one thing which I want you to ask you about, its effects on mental, spiritual, and physical, for the community, and how important. I think generally, I think the spiritual side and the mental side is quite important for our immune system, I think there's a big difference between somebody who has faith in God, in Allah, and those who are not, have no faith. It makes a big difference on their health as well. So what's your opinion about closure and opening a mosque and these discrepancies, like we see it in the schools as well? Some are open, some are closed.
Well, that's it. Look, this is a virus that has really messed up all the plans that people had. They still don't understand it. And as they try to understand the virus, it mutates. And now it's going through, like, I think, a third mutation now. And there's a new one, I think, in South Africa. And each time it's becoming more infectious. Now, the question, really, the big question that for which, as far as I can see, there's no real comprehensive and affirmative, clear answer is whether the vaccine that is being, used, whether it's the Pfizer, BioNTech, or whether it's the AstraZeneca or Moderna, or there's about 3 or 4 of them now.
Yes, 3 have been approved now, yeah.
Or the Chinese one, whether they will be effective on the new strain, the mutated form of this of COVID-19. So that's something. Because if it's not effective, that really, you can imagine what a mess the world is going to end up being in. Because now they've taken a year to produce this vaccine, which, and that's a record time, bearing in mind what's happened in the past. The SARS, which is also a coronavirus, till now it's been 17 years, they haven't found a vaccine for it. HIV virus. It's been, I don't know, is it 40 years now? Maybe about 40 years from the early 80s, and they haven't found a vaccine for it. So to find a vaccine for this coronavirus in less than a year is absolutely remarkable, and it kind of gives you an idea of the level of scientific progress there has been for them to be able to come up with a vaccine. But of course, we have to wait and see whether it's effective or not, and especially on this new strain, which is now the majority of people who've got the virus have actually got the new strain. About 60% of those suffering from the virus have got the new strain, which started in London, and then of course now we've got another strain starting from South Africa, which again will spread very quickly, even though most flights are not operating now, but still, it'll find a way to get around the world, one way or the other. So yeah, that's the big question now. Is we had other questions like, is the all these conspiracy theories around the vaccine, whether they'll have little, robots which will change our DNA and we will be controlled by the government, remote control, and all of these things which have been going around. But now the issue is, never mind all that. This new, as the virus is mutating, are these vaccines that people are having so much hope in, are they going to be effective? Or do they have to keep
because I think
finding
statistically, I think today was 1,325 deaths due to COVID-19.
Well,
And almost
because
we're reaching almost 68,000, almost 70,000 death toll in UK, and of course worldwide about, I think we have almost 1.8 million death toll. Of course, and about 84 million, I think, who have been infected as well. And even now in London, because of the rate, about 1% now is at 1,100,000, 1% of the population of London infected, and now I think the mayor of London, Khan, I think is actually.
Sadiq Khan, yes.
Huh?
Sadiq Khan.
Sadiq Khan is declaring like a state of emergency in London. Of course, London is about 8 million people living there. So therefore, the idea of closing a mosque or opening it, do you think that the decision itself as well? I respect the decision of all of them as well, because they have their own analysis of things and their own judgment. But do you think that mosques for this time is not needed more than actual this closing and fear about infection?
I always recite the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "La darara wa la dirar," which effectively mean, do not harm yourself and do not harm others. So protect yourself from any harm and make sure you are not harming anyone else. Now, if we are to follow that very simple but very powerful hadith, then we should keep away from everyone as much as we possibly can, because as we can see, this virus is now out of control. It really is out of control. That's the only way to put it. The R rate has got to be less than 1.
No, it's between 1 and 1.4.
Exactly, 1 to 1.4, which means it's exponential. It is literally going up that way, exponentially. And it is out of control. And the only way to contain it is by minimizing all contact. Now, the main culprits are parties, and people are still having parties, in their homes and stuff. And some of these youth are whether they're students or otherwise, are very irresponsible. They know that it will not harm them too much, although this new variant is apparently the youth are getting it as well.
Affected, yes.
Yeah. But it's not going to affect them too much, and so they're being very irresponsible. What they don't realize is that, okay, it may not affect them too much, but they could be giving it to other people that they could kill. So they're having their parties, and they're having, people who are going to pubs, and obviously once you've had a few drinks, social distancing is not, top of the agenda for you in terms of safety and stuff. And so, of course, people are passing it like that. And of course, schools, children are passing it to each other, and then they're passing it to their parents and to the teachers. The government didn't want to admit before that the children are passing it to the teachers. But of course, now with the new information that we've been given in the last couple of days, yes, a lot of teachers have got it from the children. But the equation that the government has been using since March is with regards, leaving the whether to close or leave the schools open, is what they're saying is it will do the children more harm not to go to school than to go to school. So on the balance of it, they're saying, well, yes, there is harm going to school, but the children will suffer far greater harm not going. And a lot of them, of course, we know, are suffering from mental health conditions, being locked up. That's not the natural thing for a child. A child wants to play around, be with friends, and all the rest of it. And that's not happening. And a lot of children are suffering because of that. Not only that, you know how much impact not going to school has, even for a week or two, on a child. Well, it's been 9 months since any kind of normality. And you can just imagine, 10 months now, the impact on children's education. And of course, although the government is saying, yes, you can go online and stuff, but, the government doesn't appreciate how much poverty there is in this country. You and I can afford, good broadband, and, we can access the internet, no problem. But there's a lot of people who can't afford to do that. Or reception is very, very poor. Or, imagine living in the 8th floor of a block of flats. Reception is poor. You can't go outside. You're locked up. And the weather, of course, you can see how bad the weather is, freezing cold nowadays. So you can see the serious harm that's being done to children. So that's why the government, very reluctantly has said, well, schools can remain open. But now with it, after saying they must open, suddenly they took a U-turn straight after Christmas. But of course, what they should have done, and the reason they took a U-turn, is because it's shooting upwards, the virus. And of course, this was predicted. All they had to do was cancel Christmas and say, right, that's it. No parties at home. Within the family, just have your, Christmas dinner, your turkey and whatever. But no getting together, not even 2 families, never mind more than 2. And that, of course, people got drunk, and they were, spreading the virus extremely, seriously. And of course, now we are feeling it. We always knew about 2 weeks, 3 weeks after Christmas, that's where we are going to see a massive surge, because of when the symptoms start kicking in. And that's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. So all this was predicted.
And
And
was it because of the pressure of the National Union of Teachers, where they ask their members not to go to schools because it's too
well, this is it.
dangerous,
Yes.
and therefore they
And
didn't
now
want them to go?
the government was hiding the statistics about how many teachers have been infected from the students. And now it has been revealed, and it's at least 3 times worse than what the government was saying. So the government was basically lying to the people, because they didn't want, if the teachers don't come in, then there's no point saying schools are open. You need the teachers for the lessons. So they were hiding the facts, and now teachers basically said, forget it, we're not going. We don't want to go to, for the sake of dying. So that's why when they realized the virus is out of control and a lot of teachers are going to end up dying, so they said, that's fine. We'll just have to do a complete serious lockdown to totally minimize any contact.
And that applies to the universities who are stuck with the online teaching. Do you think that there is a petition that the actual students are asking for reduction of the fees from 9,000 to 3,000 pounds?
I think that's very reasonable. They're not, what are they paying the fees for? They're paying the fees for lectures, being there, present. They're paying the fees for all the sort of obviously use of the equipment, where there are labs and stuff. They use it. The fees are there for all of these things, and they're being deprived of them now. And also, of course, online, some people can do it and others can't. It's not ideal. You've taught, you do online, I teach online, and I hate teaching online because I can't feel the atmosphere of the class. That's, that causes a lot of dynamism within the class when you are walking around, you're checking the students.
Yes.
That interaction, that atmosphere, you cannot have online.
I think we might actually connect with some Muslim students are asking for Sharia compliant loans, therefore they don't have to pay interest on it. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, if we can get Sharia compliant anything within this secular liberal environment and system that we're living in, that's a bonus. When we came to this country, we knew it wasn't an Islamic country. It was a non-Muslim country and a secular liberal country which has no respect for any religion. And if they respect faith, whether it's halal food or whether it's interest-free loans or whatever, then that, we should regard that as an extra bonus for us, and say, alhamdulillah, that we're able to have that facility. So yes, the more of these facilities, Sharia compliant things which help us to sin less, whether it's mortgage for your house or whether it's the students taking out loans, then that has to be a good thing. And definitely, we should be grateful to the government, if they are going to allow this on a major level. I know there are Muslim organizations which are already providing interest-free loans for Muslim students, but for the government to do it, they would have to find some kind of benefit for themselves, otherwise they won't do it. But certainly lobbying will help, and we certainly should, yes, definitely we should support those who are lobbying to have interest-free loans for students.
Okay, I think we might link up, because talking about students and universities, this definition of anti-Semitism and the education secretary sending letters to the universities to tell them to adopt this International Human Rights Alliance, I think, anti-Semitism definition and its effect on the Code of Freedom of Speech. And some universities said this is political interference in the university's affairs. And do you think that the anti-Semitism, I think, why not for Islamophobia as well, this kind of things, but do you think that does this, because you have to make a difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, you know, and therefore those are two things which are always confused. And I believe that the universities, some of them, I think, majority of them, haven't, I think, adopted that definition, although about 30 of them have adopted it, but the rest they haven't.
The question is, what is the impact on freedom of speech? As you said, yes, anti-Semitism, which is basically hatred of Jews because they are Jews, that, you know, there's no debate on that. That's wrong. It has to be wrong. That's racism. Any form of racism for us Muslims is strictly forbidden. So if there is a law that tackles anti-Jewish hatred, like Islamophobia, anti-Muslim hatred, or any form of racism, then obviously, you know, we should support that, and everyone should support that. But the question is, does this particular definition go too far and start to restrict people's freedom of speech with regards to the state of Israel? That is really the issue. And unfortunately, there's general consensus, certainly from what I've read, that for those who don't want to adopt it, is that it stops people from criticizing Israel and the racist policies and the oppressive policies of Israel towards the Palestinians. Now, if those who want to, the government wants to push this particular definition on others, then it should make it crystal clear that no, this is about stopping anti-Jewish hatred, and in no way is criticism of the Israeli state being banned under this particular definition. That is, we need clarification on that. And there is no clarification. Because what they're very deliberately doing, the Zionists, is deliberately conflating, mixing, confusing anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. And they've been trying to do this for last at least 30 years. I mean, I remember when the Sabra and Shatila massacre happened in September of 1982 in Lebanon, when two whole camps, Sabra and Shatila, were just massacred. And it was Ariel Sharon, it was the Israelis who were in control of that area. They had just invaded Lebanon, and they were in control of that area. And then what happened was that the Maronite Christians, they were given access, who hated the Palestinians, they were given access by Ariel Sharon to the camps. And they just slaughtered everyone and everything in those camps. And of course, everyone could see this was a deliberate act by Israel, by Ariel Sharon, in allowing these Maronite Christians to slaughter the Palestinians. And there was enormous pressure on Israel to condemn, what had happened. And even, Jews here in this country were condemning it, that this was wrong, what happened, and, we should have no part in it. And those who are responsible, like Ariel Sharon, who of course later became the Prime Minister of Israel, should be punished. And the only punishment he was given was minister without portfolio. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that when the prime minister at the time, I think it was Yitzhak Shamir possibly, he commented that anyone who wants a public inquiry into this massacre is an anti-Semite. That's exactly what he said, is anti-Semitic. Anyone who wants a public inquiry into this massacre. Of course, he went further and exposing the racist nature of his brain and of Zionism. And he said to ask for a public inquiry into the massacre of these Palestinians in Sabra and Shatila was like asking for a funeral service for a few flies that had died. And in another place, he says cockroaches which had died. So that exposes the very racist nature of the Zionist ideology, as opposed to, of course, Judaism. Judaism has got nothing to do with Zionism. And we have discussed Zionism before, you and I, in some depth, because not every Jew is a Zionist and not every Zionist is a Jew.
And there was actually a protest, I think, demonstration about 126,000 Orthodox Jews who are against the state of Israel and its creation as well.
Exactly, because for them, it's a profanity that Israel was created, because it is the Messiah who is supposed to take the Jews to the so-called promised land. And Britain, France, America, Russia are not the Messiah. They're the ones who created, the conditions for Israel to come about and supported it. So yes, that is the reality. So we're talking about anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. Yes, so long as this definition does not stop people from condemning the oppression of the Israelis towards the Palestinians and condemning Zionism, not as a religious or ethnic ideology, but as a political ideology, that's fine. But the general feeling is that's exactly what it does. It stops people from pointing out the horrors being inflicted on the Palestinian people by the state of Israel.
Okay, I think we will just remind our listeners, I think you are listening to this A2Z show with our host, your host, Dr. Abdul Aziz, and our guest, Brother Asad Zaman, the current affairs show as well, and we just covered some local community and of course the national UK, and I think we might just go, before we go international, to European. And I believe that today there was a complaint about the actual prices of the seafood and farm food from UK going up, and the bureaucracy going up as well. And as you have predicted as well, I think time will show that the details of that deal between the United Kingdom and the European Union. And of course, now some of those people who are traders and business are feeling the effect of this Brexit and on their businesses, prices wise, and on the bureaucracy, which means time spent to get out of and to go from one country to another country. Do you think that, I think we still have to wait and see what is the effect of this deal and on the business cost and the passage and the transfer of goods from UK to European countries and vice versa?
Well, everyone knew. I mean, I was just listening to the news this morning regarding what's happening, and of course, as you would expect with any kind of software and these new conditions that have started. And remember, no one has ever left the EU in 40 or so years that it started, and it's the first time. So there are bound to be, teething problems, teething pains in the start, and gradually, after maybe a couple of months, they will sort out the software. Many things which are not predicted, but in reality now that they've, the Brexit conditions have now been implemented, then they are identifying problems. And well, every problem has a solution. So yes, there'll be a bit of chaos initially for the first month or so, but gradually they will, there's so much wonderful technology around that will make the whole process a lot simpler. But definitely, that people are going to realize at some stage that this was a seriously bad idea. But it's we have to just accept it now for at least maybe 20 to 30 years. Things are not going to change, at least a generation. Perhaps if the experience is really, really traumatic, and any divorce generally is a traumatic experience. And it's a very reluctant divorce as well. It's not an enthusiastic divorce. There was a lot of lying that was, perpetrated. A lot of lies were told to people about the harms of being in the EU and how nasty the EU is, and we'll be far better off without the EU, and we'll be richer without the EU. We'll be able to go into different countries and have far better deals with them in terms of import, export and stuff. I think, especially with the COVID situation, that may or may not happen. And if it doesn't happen, and especially if America closes its door and doesn't treat Britain as as a special case, we always boast of this special relationship. But I think we do more boasting than the Americans do. The Americans don't really care too much about us. Until, of course, unless they go into a war that nobody supports, and then Britain is happy to support it, as we know with Iraq, for example.
Right.
So yes, these initial teething problems, they were expected, and gradually, they'll be ironed out. But I think the regret will be there that I think we did it. This was not in our interest. Now that we see the reality.
Okay, I think let's move on the international scene or the world news. I think the news was actually the storming of Capitol Hill, where the Senate were discussing the certification of Joe Biden. Of course, at the end, they did it, and Joe Biden got 306, and Trump was defeated badly at 232. So therefore, the first thing is a storming of the Capitol Hill. The pictures were all from social media. I think there was a very noticed absence of the media. It wasn't covered. I saw it in Al Jazeera live anyway, but there was on the social media more than actually on the international network. And of course, the development of the protest, a peaceful, between inverted commas, protest became a riot, and then a storming, and then, of course, so far, I think there were 5 people dead, including a policeman who just died because of his injury, and almost about 60 arrests and a lot of damage as well. Now, what's your opinion and on the whole incident? And if the President Trump, the president now, wants to make a point, what is the point he wants to make?
there are a number of things that we can say about this. Some things which have been said in the media and other things which have not been said. So I'm going to tell you something that you've probably not heard before. Look, first of all, look at if you want to ask me about this storming of the Capitol Hill, Trump is a bad loser. Everybody knows that. He's a bad loser. He's lost very clearly. And he just cannot accept that after just one term, he's been kicked out. He just cannot handle that. Also, who are these people that listened to him and did something quite ridiculous, like almost trying to bring down American democracy? In 200 years, it's never happened before. So these are people that he stuck his neck out for. And these are your kind of people who've not experienced the American dream. I think you're familiar with that phrase, the American dream. But basically, you're well off. America is a land of milk and honey. This is like this is how America's been always painted. This is Jannah place where you come with nothing and you might become a multimillionaire, and like Mr. Musk, Elon Musk, now the richest guy in the world with 140 odd billion pounds to his name. He's taken over from Bezos of Amazon. This is what America's about prosperity, about riches, about living basically beyond imagination. And of course, there are millions of people, and a lot of them are white Americans, who've not experienced that. And they've seen Black and Chinese and Asians, Indians and others, going up the ladder, getting, richer and more prosperous. And the white working class, they haven't got jobs now. COVID has made things a lot worse. Even before COVID, industries were going down. The Chinese, all manufacturing and everything was going to China. So the average American worker was being laid off. You got more automation coming in. So more, like the whole of the car industry, is run by robots. They've replaced the people. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, were employed, and now they're all automated. And that's the direction things are going. That people are going to be laid off. Artificial intelligence is going to take over. And who are going to suffer the most? It is the very poor. And so the last 4 years, Trump, one of Trump's bases, Trump's got a couple of bases, people who've supported him and got him into the White House. One of them was this particular base, the white working class, who feel they've just been shoved aside, marginalized. And therefore, they've seen him as standing up for them. And so what Trump basically said to them, and this is why they came, is, listen, I stuck my neck out for you guys, and I was, doing everything I did for you, down to the Muslim ban and this and that, and trying to keep the country safe, and jobs. That I've been trying to get more jobs for you, and this, that, the other, etc. And now it's your turn to do something for me. You see, you need to keep me in power. And they responded. And who are these? These are your far right and your lower sort of, your working class, lower classes of America. And so you see all the thuggery and all that. So that's at the kind of, at the microscopic level, if you want to just concentrate on why this happened. He's a bad loser, and he's being kicked out. He can't handle it, and he's told his supporters, "Come and support me," as if somehow they could overturn the result. They couldn't overturn the result. So what was all that about? It's just difficult to understand what's going on inside this guy's head. Anyhow, look, there is a bigger picture. And the bigger picture is America is not great as it was before, great in terms of prosperity, jobs, money, etc. And China is on the rise, and other countries have taken over manufacturing and even scientific technology and what have you. Others are taking over. You've got your South Korea, you've got your, of course, Japan and Europe, and of course the main one being China. And so manufacturing and all the rest of it is shifting abroad. I think the best time for America was about 1972. People don't realize that most of the manufacturing in the world was in the US, about 60-odd%. 60% of everything that was being produced in the entire world was actually being produced in the US. So now it's down to less than, I think, 40%, and going further and further down as other countries develop and start, manufacturing themselves. And of course, people are not as crazy as they were about American cars. Japanese have really got the market. Now you've got your South Korea. They're taking more and more of the market. So you're seeing a decline of the US. But of course, America wants to impose itself on the world. America is the policeman of the world. Nobody does anything without America's permission. That's the whole point of having so many aircraft carriers and planes and having the most powerful military on the planet the world has ever seen, actually. It's to impose its authority. No country does anything without American permission. And of course, with the petrodollar being supreme, thanks to the Saudis back in the early 70s, where they accepted to deal their buy and sell oil, sell their oil in dollars, then that gave enormous power to the dollar, and that kind of imposed American control over basically the world, and all of trade being done in dollars and stuff. As we see America on the decline, a strong economy means a strong military. But if you're, and we're talking about over $600-700 billion a year on their military. That's more than the next 9 or 10 or 11 countries put together. Although the Chinese are now obviously trying to catch up, from 50 billion to 100, 150, 200 billion. They've been spending on their military, and they, in a few years' time, they will end up spending as much as the United States. And as China becomes more and more economically powerful and militarily powerful, it will expect, we can expect China to impose its will on the world as the US is imposing its will. So what is America doing? Is trying to bring down China, destroy its economy.
But there was, going back to the riots and the storming of the Capitol Hill and all this kind of thing. Some people compared why this lack of security during this storming of Capitol Hill compared with the Black Lives Matters. Why there was a big difference between how the security? Is it because of the nature and there are problem within the system, the establishment?
Well, I mean, I was just reading one of the newspapers today, and somebody said, if these were Black people who had done this, there would have been a massacre. And I believe that. I absolutely believe that. If it was Black people who had done exactly what these white people had done, there would have been an absolute massacre. But because they're white, then they took a more lenient attitude, I suppose. And also, I think they were caught off guard. That's another important point. They didn't expect it. They did not expect this to happen. But of course, Trump has been asking for it. He was telling people.
And did the social media, Twitter and Facebook were helping because he's pushing those mob to go to inside. Therefore, do you think that the social media has a responsibility, like Twitter and Facebook, leaving Trump sending messages to his supporters?
Well, clearly, everybody knows he's a Twitter user, and 3 o'clock in the morning is tweeting. So definitely, they should have taken action, as Facebook should have taken action when that guy was live streaming the massacre in the mosque in New Zealand, in Christchurch. They allowed him. It was quite some time before they did anything. But I was saying about the bigger picture, because what you're asking me is connected with what I want to say. See, as America goes down, I remember speaking to a professor of finance who specialized in the American financial system. He was at Manchester Business School. And in 2001, this is before 9/11, just before 9/11, because 9/11 was in September, and I spoke to him first of all, I spoke to him in March, so a few months before 9/11. And he was saying to me that never mind anything else, the moral, the Qawmi loot stuff that's going on in America and all the rest of it, never mind anything else, just from the way these 50 or so states are held together, financially, it is not viable for them to stay that way forever. And he said to me, I give America 50 years max before the whole financial system collapses and America becomes not 52 states, but 50 or so countries, separate entities. Interestingly, I met him about a month after 9/11 at a charity dinner. And he came and sat with me and said, I said, remember that discussion we had 6 months ago? And I said to you, I give America 50 years. I give America just 20 years now. That people don't realize what a massive, massive impact 9/11 had on their economy. It knocked off about 30 years from their viability. And so what you're seeing now is that financial system crumbling, and people are suffering. And as people suffer, the fault lines within America are going to show up. And you're going to see these earthquakes happening between the rich and the poor, between blacks and whites, and Hispanics and what America is going to end up fragmenting. And especially as people get poorer, America is becoming more and more Hispanic. It was white before, white European, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, with a huge number of Hispanics, Mexicans, and others coming in. It's becoming less white Anglo-Saxon Protestant and more Hispanic. Spanish, I think, is probably spoken more than English is now in the United States. And of course, I remember back in the sort of mid-80s, it was officially announced. It was on the BBC, it was on a newspaper, New York Times, that the establishment is no longer, and this is interesting, they said the establishment in the United States is no longer white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, that it has been since the founding fathers. They said, and this was in mainstream media, that the establishment is now Jewish. Think about that. That is what was said, that the establishment in the US is now Jewish. So, and these far right, like Trump and all his supporters, they really are anti-Semitic. They really hate the Jews because they see the Jews as running America. That's their perspective. And that's why there's this feeling amongst the far right that the system is replacing the whites who are supposed to be running America, who, the original, well, not the original, those who massacred the Red Indians and took over, were white, Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and they're being replaced now. The white race is being replaced by Hispanics and others. And this is one thing that is creating all these problems. And the supporters of Trump are these far-right people who feel that he actually speaks for them and nobody else dares speak for them. And so you remember the famous chant was it Charleston, where the far right came out and Trump should have condemned them and he didn't. He said there are, good people amongst them and all the rest of it. The fact is, what were they chanting? The Jews will not replace us. This is what they were chanting.
Do you think that is more to tends more than to Zionism and its effect?
I don't think so.
In United States,
I'm not
actual,
sure. No,
huh?
see, the Zionist element is much more in the Middle East element of Israel. But I think there is a Jewish element in America because the Jews, they work hard. There's supposed to be about 6-7 million of them in America. Probably there are more than that, but that's the figure that, we hear all the time, about 6-7 million. And most of them in New York, which is the capital of the financial capital of the United States. Washington, D.C. is the actual capital, but the financial capital of the U.S. is New York. And New York, as anyone goes there knows, the financial system is mostly in Jewish hands. And not just sort of Zionists, but, even Orthodox. In fact, I saw you might have seen that a video by an Orthodox rabbi, and in America, and he was saying, he said some real, alarming stuff. He said, look, we Jews and mostly Orthodox Jews control this stock market situation, and if things go bad in America, we Jews are going to get it, because people know that the majority of people are actually not even secular Jews, but actually Orthodox Jews. And if something happens in the stock market and it goes downhill, we are going to be the ones that will be blamed. So the far right in America, was the KKK or where, they always target the Jews in particular rather than just Zionists, because they feel that they have taken over the system. And if you listen to, the head of the KKK, the former head, what's his name, Duke? Is it David Duke? He tries to come across as respectable and stuff, but he is what he is. These people are aware of the power of Zionism, yes, but also of Jews in America and how they control the politics and stuff. Pat Buchanan, he was not far right or anything, but he was outspoken. I don't know if you heard of Pat Buchanan.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? I don't know. Yeah,
Yes,
he was a well-known senator, and he wrote he wrote a book on the influence of Zionism in America, and he gave a famous quote. He said that Congress is Israeli occupied territory.
Mm.
This is a quote by him. We say Palestine is Israeli occupied territory.
Do you think that
Congress.
because of the Democrats control, I think, all houses, the Senate and House of Representatives, and the Congress as well, do you think that they can turn the whole thing around,
Well,
as
obviously,
far as race is concerned, all these kind of things, opportunities, equal opportunities, everything?
that is the expectation, that now we've got this nightmare of Trump is over, that we've actually got a proper president in the White House who actually talks like a president. He looks like a president, talks like and behaves like a president. And these 4 years of nightmare with this gangster who just said whatever he felt like saying and did whatever he felt like doing, and the unpredictability of Trump, that's now over. That is the hope. And it all depends on who he has around him. I mean, Trump surrounded himself with, far-right, anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant people, because that was Trump. So we need to be careful now, watch carefully who Biden has around him, because Biden himself, I mean, from a Muslim perspective, Biden himself has made it clear in the past he's a Zionist. And then you've got Harris, he's vice
president. Yeah.
She has made it clear that she is also a Zionist.
Mm-hmm.
So, but are they as extreme as Trump? Are they as reliant on the conservative Christians, the Zionist, the Christian Zionist lobby, which is very, very powerful in America? Are they as reliant on their votes and their money? That time will tell, because one day money talks, and whoever sort of whoever lobbies them harder and pays them more, obviously they will be keen to keep them happy. But one hopes that Biden's presidency will be a little less extreme than Trump's. But remember, Biden is what, 77, 78. If anything happens to him, if he dies, for example, then Kamala Harris will take over. And this is a woman of sort of Jamaican, Indian, Hindu, Christian kind of mixture. Whether she will have any more Muslim-friendly policies, who knows? Let's hope
I think we have to wait until 14 days after. And the other thing is, in this 14 days left in the term of Trump, a lot of people are calling for his removal because he's a risk.
Yes, impeachment.
Under this 25th Amendment of so. Do you think, because of if he triggers a war against Iran or whatever, so therefore, do you think that is a risk, or this will not happen?
With Trump, anything is possible. But what they're trying to do, last night I was listening, what the Democrats are trying to do is basically to clip his wings, so that now that Biden has been officially declared president, which was, especially after the storming of Capitol Hill, that's what even the Republicans, they thought, oh my God, what is going on? This is the end of our democracy here. So let's just swear this guy in quickly and stop talking about, fraud having taken place in the, election and stuff. Otherwise, we're just feeding him more. So they quickly swore him in. And so Biden basically now has the power. And what they were trying to do yesterday was to basically clip his wings, Trump's wings, so that he is unable to declare war, nuclear war, or any other kind of war against anyone in his last few days.
That's very optimistic as well. Now, last thing, I think we have just about a few minutes to finish our show, is regarding this agreement between Saudis and Qataris and this Gulf Cooperation Council. going back after this 3.5 year boycotting of Qatar. What do you think? Is it a good thing? Is it hopeful? And or
I
is it
think,
just
yeah,
there is an
well,
agenda behind?
look, to some extent, it's face saving as well. Trump was a great friend of MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. He was a great friend, probably of UAE as well, but certainly, he protected him enormously. And I'm sure MBS is not happy at Biden coming in. And so he thought, rather than have this situation forced on him, let's preempt it. So that I think Biden coming into power has got a lot to do with Saudi Qatar rapprochement. That I think is more likely the reason for this rapprochement rather than any goodwill or whatever. Because remember, at the end of the day, the Saudis and the rest of the Gulf states, they hate, absolutely detest the Muslim Brotherhood. And from what I understand, the leader of Qatar is very much part of them, or is very sympathetic to the Muslim Brotherhood. Some he's actually a member of them. So
I think they decided that not to interfere in the internal affairs of the respective countries in these Gulf states.
yeah, so because of that, see, the question is, the Saudis, they gave, I don't know how many, was it 14 or so points to Qatar, tick all these boxes and you can come back in. Yeah. And he didn't tick any of those boxes, and they've still allowed him back in. They said, close down Al Jazeera, have nothing more to do with Iran, have nothing more to do with
Iran,
in Syria and this, that, and he didn't do any of that. He just carried on. So they realized, this guy is going to stick to his guns because Saudi couldn't bring down Qatar. So because of Biden and because of what might happen, and the situation with the Khashoggi affair is still there, and I'm sure MBS is now worried that possibly, again, it depends on how Biden's relationship with Turkey is going to be. In the past, Biden said some pretty nasty things about Turkey and Erdogan. Now, whether his attitude has changed, if it has, then maybe the Khashoggi affair might resurface, and maybe America won't protect MBS as much as Trump protected MBS. So I'm sure the Saudi leadership now, MBS, is extremely concerned about what policies America will have towards Saudi, especially now that Saudi is not as important as it used to be. America, I don't think, imports any Saudi oil now. It's got its own oil. And as the world is moving away from oil, the Saudi influence in the region is going to definitely go down. So as the world moves more and more towards solar, wind, electric, all these alternative forms of energy, Saudi is going to suffer financially enormously, and so Saudi is going to need these Gulf countries are going to need to cooperate with each other. And Qatar, is probably one of the leaders in that region in terms of technology, etc. So they will need, Qatar in order to survive the future, I would think.
Right. Okay. I think with that, we will say an end to this 1 hour A2Z show. I hope you enjoyed listening to our program. If you have any question or comments, you can put them on the box on the YouTube, and of course on Radio Hajj as well. You can put that always on our comments and question as well. and your evaluation as well, your feedback as well is very, very welcome as well. I thank my guest and your guest as well, Brother Asad Zaman, for his contribution, and I thank you for your patience as well. And until we meet again, inshallah, next week, we say سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Wa alaikum salam.